forward a little bit, because I know it's hot up here. That's a good story and all, but what kind of led me to what I'm doing today? Speaking, working with people that have gone through trauma. About 5 or 6 years ago, I really working through my own recovery, because I'll tell people now, there's still nights I'll wake up in the middle of the night, sit straight up in bed, and I'll just have this thought, somebody put a bullet in my head. And I don't even know where it comes from, And in that moment, if you were standing there with a gun, I'd say pull the trigger. But I snap out of it, and I look at my wife, and I think about my kids and my friends, and all the things God's given me, and I go, you know what, I'm just going to live. I'm just going to move forward. And I get past it. It's human. It's just, you get stuff hardwired into you. In some ways, it just kind of stays there. And so I was, kind of always working through it. I had written some music, and I had a book I had written, and I was wanting to reach out to kind of help people. And I had this old professor at Vanderbilt, Dr. Volnai Gay, and he was the director of religious studies at Vanderbilt, and he was also a psychoanalyst, and he trained VA psychiatrists. And so I thought he'd be a good guy to kind of go, hey, do you think any of this could be helpful to people? So I sent it to Dr. Gay, and he listened to it and read through it all and said a lot of encouraging things to me and said, yeah, you should try to go help people. So my first reaction, I was thinking about the war, and I tried to reach out to the Guard and some other places, and it wasn't God doing it, but it was people. It's kind of like C.S. Lewis says, I just got doors put up in front of me. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'm just going to have to sing these songs to my kids and drive them crazy because no one else is going to want to hear me. And I had a friend who worked in prisons, and he said something profound to me that I found to be true, that broke is broke. When you're broke, you're broke. It doesn't matter how you get there, or how old you are, or what the circumstances were. When you're broke, you're broke. And I went to this prison, and there was probably 200 men in there. And when I got done speaking, about 60 or 80 of them came up to me and said, can you come back? And wanted to shake my hand. So I went back to this prison every week for 6 months. And after about a month, I decided, you know what, I want to do more than just tell stories. I want to try to help relate to them the steps I took to go from I'm broke, my life is worth so little to me, I want to kill myself, to I have a very clear purpose and identity for my life. And so I started working on this thing I call the Ladder Up, which is basically a program to help you really define and pinpoint what do I want my identity and purpose to be, how does that relate to the rest of my life, what are the steps do I need to take to make it happen, and broke is broke, so it doesn't matter if you're a veteran or a student or whatever. And then at the same time, thank God, and some of the people that have helped me are here, Larry and Karen especially, my college friend, who's my big brother in my fraternity, Jim Seabury, I told him what I was doing, and he wanted to help me. And he's helped me more than anyone. I'm going to start crying talking about him. I couldn't have done what I've done. I mean, I've gone, over the last 4 years, I've probably driven 200,000 miles. I've probably spoken to 10,000 people, 2 or 3 at a time, and I couldn't have done it without him, and Mike, and all you guys, and some of them are here. I couldn't have done it. But you don't get people to help you do it unless you step out. And so I started doing that, and everything came from just deciding I'm going to step out and I'm going to help somebody. And it led to Eric, and it led to them, and it led to the different places that I work and the things that I do. And it's so good today to see so many different age people here, because this is another thing that happens, is most of you, a lot of you might know each other, but how many of you really know each other deep under that shell? How many people know what keeps you up at night crying sometimes? How many people really know? I don't even know if that's the case. I don't know, I have no inside information. And the best part of this to me that I've seen is just how people relate to and help one another. Is when I started this journey to do this, one of the first places I went was Fort Drum, New York, home of the 10th Mountain Division. And I met this guy who was a retired sergeant major, and he had been deployed 5 times to Iraq, every time in a combat situation. And his last tour, he was on a patrol, and him and his patrol got hit by an RPG, which is like a grenade on the end of a rifle, sort of. And it hit this brick wall, and shrapnel went everywhere, and 3 of the guys he was with were killed and immediately went down. He was shot in the back and behind, down his leg. In front of him, the captain on patrol with him goes down and has blood squirting out of his neck like this. And so he puts one hand on this captain's neck, blood pouring down his other arm and hand, grabs radio, calls in support, stays conscious till it can get there. Literally, they show up, he passes out from loss of blood. When I met him, he had 2 strokes, a heart attack, wore a pacemaker, had woken up in the middle of the night once thinking he was in Iraq and beat up his wife because he thought she was a bad guy. And he's sitting in front of me and he's telling me this. And I just let him talk and share, and then I sort of tell him my story. And then I sing the song I'm going to sing in a minute called Hold On. I wrote, Hold On was the first song I wrote that was any good. The first song I wrote is no good, has never been played for anybody. But this was the second song I wrote, and it's not bad. And the first line of the song is, if you're like me, you stop to think, your mind takes you back to places that you don't want to be. And I sing the first line of that song, and I look up at him, and he is crying like a baby. Like a baby. And I mean, this was the hardest, toughest, like apocalypse now, dude, you can imagine. And he's like crying like a baby in front of me. And I'm just blown away, because I was like some 24, 25-year-old kid, experienced nothing like him. I would have never thought we would relate. Well, then about 6 months after that, I'm in Washington, D.C., and I'm giving a briefing on Capitol Hill, and it's all these congressmen and aides and whatnot. And sitting across from me is this woman, about 35 or 36, attractive woman, looked like she probably did aerobics for 3 hours a day. And she's sitting across from me, but the whole time I'm talking, she's looking at me like this, kind of going. And I'm thinking, man, what did I say? Because I'm ready for her to jump over the table and like scratch my eyeballs out. That kind of look. And I'm just like, whoa, it's really intimidating. I mean, if she was sitting there now, I couldn't have made it through this hour and a half. And so I come to the point where I sing that song, and I say those words, if you're like me, you stop to think, your mind takes you back to places that you don't want to be. And I look up at her, and she's like tense, and her face is like shaking, and it's all red, and like a single teardrop comes like out of each eye, like that. And I'm just like, whoa. And I get done with the song, and she, straightens up, doesn't say anything. And then I get done talking, and she comes running up, and she thanks me and hugs me, and then, I'm late for something, and she leaves. I was like, whoa. And then someone else comes up to nose her, and it turns out that 6 of her friends, since 9/11, she was married to a soldier. 6 of her friends since 9/11 had killed themselves. And 2 of them had done it together in like a suicide pact thing. And I mean, it's like flashing in front of me. I mean, I'm thinking of me when I wrote the song, and I'm thinking to the guy I met at Fort Drum, and I'm thinking of her, and I'm like, whoa, it's the same thing. And then sort of the third part to this is I'm at a friend who overzealously likes my singing, and he wanted me to come sing at this coffee shop where he went to college at Ball State, a little place called The Cup. And I said, dude, there's no way. I mean, I'm some old dude, no college student wants to hear me sing. I'm not going, man. And one day I get a call from him. He's like, man, you're booked. You gonna be there on Wednesday? I was like, oh. So I go to this coffee shop, and it's just me and like these speakers, and I kind of do what I'm doing now, singing and talking. And I don't think anybody except my 4 friends in the front row are looking at me or paying attention or anything. But I do notice, just because she's upset, in the back of the coffee shop is this little table. And it looks like there are these 2 girls that are probably freshmen or sophomores with their backs to me. And then these 2 girls that look younger, maybe freshmen or in high school, but young, like 17, 18, and 18, 19. And the one is really upset and talking to her friends. And never do I think she's listening to me or anything. But she's upset, like to the point of animated, almost in tears, crying. And so I get through my set, and the place is closing, and everyone leaves, and talking to my friends. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so glad I came. It's like, it's an hour home, and I know some of my kids are still going to be up, and just all these horrible thoughts. And so I'm putting, all my gear up, and I look back at the table where they were sitting, and there was this little piece of paper. And I'm like, and I don't know why, because it's a coffee shop. What's so strange about a piece of paper on the table? But I'm like, what is it? So I go back and look, and it's a little piece of paper, and this girl had drawn, picture me in black magic marker, picture me singing in my speakers, and then she had the name of the song, Hold On. If you're like me, you stop to think, your mind takes you back to places that you don't want to be. And then like a bunch of exclamation points, and then like 4 or 5 little teardrops. And this is that picture. Right there. That girl. And what that did for me is, sometimes it's tough to talk about yourself a lot. Just because you're like, okay, does anyone care? Does anyone understand? And then you meet so many people, and everyone's got their own story of what happened to them. And, they don't want to hear about somebody else. They want to worry about their own problems. And, you just really start wondering, what's the point of doing all this? And what this reminds me is the point of it is, broke is broke. And when you're broke, we all need the same thing. We need other people that don't want to be broke, that want to help us, that want to hold our hand. And we want to find out what we're put here to do. Because if you don't, the pain in life will overcome you. And either something really bad will happen, or you'll just muddle through life and be one of those 65% of the people that don't like the job they're going to. And you spend 10 hours of your day driving to work, working, and 8 hours of your day sleeping, and that leaves 6 hours for everything else.